Hi everyone, I'm Casey from The Spike, and with me I have Anushka Bhatnagar, who is the publishing lead for Riot Games, India and South Asia. So, first of all, as a Christite, you're also a Christite, Anushka. I just found out, a few days ago. So, how has it been, working in Riot Games so far?
Oh, that's amazing to meet a fellow Christite. It's so rare to find people from Christ in Mumbai, but it's been amazing. So thank you for mentioning that. You're asking how has it been for me in Riot?
Yes.
It's a dream job, and it is as amazing as it looks from the outside also. It is so fun to be doing something you're so passionate about and to be able to work on it. It's been a crazy ride. I just also finished 3 years in Riot on the 7th. So,
okay, that's incredible. So now, speaking about the growth of esports in India, India and South Asia, in a market, as diverse and scattered as this region is, how do you measure growth? How do you measure impact in an area like this?
Yeah, and rightly captured, right? Like South Asia is really diverse. No two players in the regions are same. A player in Bangalore, Chennai, Kathmandu to Dhaka to Delhi, all of them perceive different campaigns very differently, right? We're also trying to work in tier 2. So say cities like Indore and Bhubaneswar and Jaipur, where we're trying to do so many activations. It's so diverse and it's so different across South Asia that no single strategy works for all the regions. But we look at a combination of multiple things when we're trying to probably say, strategize campaigns or think through plans. And it ranges from, say, audience engagement to player participation to growth to how deep the engagement we can make for the community and how the overall ecosystem can grow. And that's the vision how we work towards for. Again, since you mentioned esports, a lot of other metrics are also super important. Viewership, of course, is really important. We want to know that people are watching, people are talking about it. But viewership is one of the metrics and stats that's always there in our Excel sheets, right? But something that particularly excites me is participation. That whole journey to see a group of 5 friends to be actually able to participate, I think that's where the real action lies in. And that's where we see, okay, yeah, this is actually working out. So that's the kind of player journey and participation and the depth in the ecosystem what really matters to us. So that's what we typically target at.
Okay, yeah. Now, compared to other Southeast Asian countries and compared to India, are there any distinct strategies or any separate plans that you guys have made or you guys try to apply which separates the Indian market from the other South Asian markets?
Absolutely. I think, again, right, while there is a global strategy that comes in, all the markets are so different. There is nothing common that can be replicated across different markets. And as I mentioned, right, depth in the ecosystem is what we're looking at. We want more players to participate. We want more engagement. We want more teams to be formed. We want more people just engaging in general. And I think that is where we typically backwork from. Again, each market is so different that there is no playbook. You, as somebody I feel who has traveled across for esports tournaments in India or even across, you would know better than anybody else that it is so diverse and it is so different that no brand playbook can work for all of these markets. So how we work with is that while localization is important, insight is even more important, and those are the insights that we typically work for. And there are sometimes we do campaigns which are so specific and so niche, and that has worked out really well for us. If I were to give you an example, I don't know if you've gone through our Instagram. We've hyper-localized some crazy stuff. You'll come across some really funny memes which are so niche from some corner part of the country which has been going viral, and that's one of the smaller ways on how we try to stay in touch with the community, how we communicate with them.
Okay, now speaking of growth and growth in India, VALORANT, they've introduced an initiative called Game Changers, which is for women and marginalized genders. Now, obviously, GC has been, improving bit by bit throughout the years, but how do you think Game Changers has been implemented in India? Are you happy with it? And also, how far do you think you'll be able to take it?
Yeah, no, that's a good question. And of course, always we want to have more women and more people from the marginalized community participating in these tournaments. And Game Changers is one of the tournaments. If you followed 2025 Game Changers, I think we had Asterisk doing really well, and we had Casper and Meow also fly down to Korea just for the experience, even though they didn't make it to the finals. But we just want more participation, and ultimately that is what we work towards. Again, I feel that esports community has a long way to go in terms of developing it, but from a local publishing market, we've been taking a bunch of initiatives. Yesterday itself, day before yesterday, we've launched a VALORANT Campus Cup. I don't know if you've gotten a chance to go through that, but if I were to like talk you through some of the basics, so it's like a collegiate tournament which is happening across India. And over there, we've just added one layer for female and marginalized community, which will have a different set of qualifiers. This is where we're actually enabling from tier 2, tier 3, tier 1 cities across India to actually come and participate. Because again, in competitions like GC, while they're quintessential for our ecosystem to grow, we cannot enable grassroots growth there. And we definitely feel that where it actually starts is at our grassroots. And we're going to implement that through VCC this time. And it'll be interesting to see how the participation flows down there.
Okay, that's amazing. Now, speaking of, Campus Cup and collegiate level tournaments, how does the structure work? Like, how does one person, starting from, let's say, ranked, how does one person starting from the rank grind to challengers to the big stage, how does the entire pipeline work, especially for a market like India?
Yeah, so I think you're asking specifically about the Campus Cup, right? The collegiate one.
Yeah, so how does the entire pipeline work? Yes. So from the collegiate cup to the big stage. So
correct.
Yes.
So again, right, like taking a step back and simplifying the player journey, ultimately we want people to participate. And that journey can be as simple as, hey, we were 5 friends, we saw this and we participated in it. And that's where the actual journey lies in. Through VCC, what we're trying to encourage more is that people sitting out in colleges and gaming cafes, and that's where our real audience lies. We want all of them to come and actually participate. So they can just simply go in, register, and then go through the qualifiers. Once they have qualified and probably say won the platform, they again become the VCC champs, which is the comp level. And this is just to introduce a very structured comp layer, because we realized that there is a big gap here. Our grassroots were not growing, and grassroots is where we actually wanted to focus on. So VCC is essentially enabling all of those colleges, gaming cafes, female players, marginalized community players, everybody to just participate, because the starting point was missing and we wanted to really bridge that gap. Once they've registered, they've gone through the qualifiers, there'll be layers of people, teams that have been coming and up and coming. We are still figuring out the right layers of how we should move them up to the international stage. But this sort of connects to also how Atlas is progressing in 2027. I'm sure you must have already seen the format and how open it has become.
Yes.
So eventually, I feel that that's how the dotted lines will connect. That because the tournament in itself is so open, it's so accessible to any and everybody and any team that is formed. I think that gives the right platform from them to like progress from VCC to Atlas.
Okay, now speaking of the format change, when it was announced, it caused a really big uproar amongst all the regions. Now, Jake Sin, who's head of VCT APAC, he mentioned that Korea, Japan, Thailand, Indonesia, and Vietnam, they're all getting their standalone regions. They're all getting their standalone qualifiers. But South Asia, Southeast Asia, Oceania, they've all been clubbed into one sort of one qualification path. So you have anything you want to say about that?
Yeah, I actually look at it a little differently, right? How South Asia and Oceania is progressing in the ladder is that they're just getting into the wider VCT Pacific system through a qualifier. Everything is happening through last chance qualifier, right? And I just feel that it's going to the same destination, but through a different route. And I feel that's not the worst way. What I actually like about the system is that it makes the journey feel a lot more tangible, a lot more reachable. You don't have to start life as like, you don't have to be an international org to be able to make it. It could be just anybody from any city, any college, any good 5-stack who probably has the capability to make it. So I look at it a little differently. While I know it, it caused the community to chatter more about it, it's ultimately leading to the same destination. So that's how I look at it,
Okay, now, Jackson also mentioned that Thailand, Indonesia and Vietnam, these 3 regions, he singled them out as some of the fastest growing regions for VALORANT. What do you think are the challenges to make India and South Asia to grow them to that level? And what do you and how much time do you think it would take? Just, a rough estimate, anything you want to share?
Yeah, I think again, I look at it a little differently, right? I think the answer is actually something we should be excited about rather than being defensive about. And the question also here is that how do we prove that India actually deserves it? That how do we build an ecosystem that it's impossible to ignore. And I think currently that's one of the challenges that we're facing. And again, right, the growth and the success is multi-dimensional. We need more players competing. We need more teams. We need more regular tournaments. We need more infrastructure. We need more depth. We need more engagement. We need more people watching. We need more viewership. We need more South Asian teams actually performing internationally. We need more teams just coming in and participating. And I think that is how we will sustain the growth over time. And once we sustain that growth over time, we will be able to build a much stronger case that as to, hey, now is the right time to take steps forward here. And I would also look at the scale at how the collegiate play is growing. I think VCC last year gave us a very strong benchmark that there is a demand, there are players, there are teams, there is participation, and there is viewership. This year, we're just taking it a notch above and trying to see what else we can do in that arena. And I think all of these small things will eventually compound and give us the kind of results that we're looking for. And I think at that point of stage, we will be at the right time to say that, hey, now is probably, we can probably look at like doing something much more bigger. Again, Rolling Loud was a very strong example to show that there is a lot of engagement, there's a lot of participation, there's a lot of demand. And I think all of these smaller things will eventually compound into something bigger, and that's when we'll be ready for it.
Okay, now, you talked about, LAN cafes and gaming cafes, and how the grassroots scene starts from there. Yeah. Historically in esports, the LAN parties and these cafes have always been at the cornerstone of these scenes and their growth. Absolutely. So and I also know Riot Games India, they partner with some other orgs like Nodwin Gaming and also some other smaller orgs to host these tournaments. So apart from them, is there any direct involvement by Riot, and also is there any other partnerships that you can talk about?
Absolutely, there's so much there. But great point. I think gaming cafes is something which is like super budding right now. And I was just speaking to like my team also here right now that I don't know if you've seen that like a lot of other apps like District now have options to book the gaming cafe and let the number of hours you want to play in. And that is so cool because that is something which was not there probably I would say even 6 months back. So the gaming cafe culture is booming, and honestly, even if you ask me right now, the next big player or the next big, Helif would be probably just sitting out somewhere in like some gaming cafe, right? But keeping that aside, we are very proactively trying to do as much as we can to, enhance the scene. Earlier, it was mostly with like one-off activations of say like certain agent launches or map launches, but we realized that there's so much scope and so much more demand that we can do a lot beyond that. One of the initiatives which we took from the local office was something called VALORANT Campus Cup. It's one of our primary collegiate activations that we've planned for. It's close to like a 6-month tournament which encourages colleges to just come, participate, register, have fun more than anything, and get that structured pathway to compete. Last year, it was JECRC, a college in Jaipur that won, and I was there myself to witness the finals, and there was so much passion, there was so much grit, there was so much competition just to like see those two teams compete. It was a finals between Bangalore and JECRC, if I'm not wrong. It was such a beautiful vibe to just be there among college students and have them, compete, and just the sheer passion of their fellow students, cheering them up, and the teams who did not make it were also present, and they were still so passionate about it. I think these are those small moments which makes us feel that, hey, like grassroots is so lively and we want to do so much more about it. Last year we partnered with Geo Games to do it. This year we've partnered with Geo Blast to do it, and it's just announced. It's been really great response so far. Since you also mentioned about Nodwin, I think they've been doing about HP Omen. That's also reaching to so many colleges. But if I were to again scope out and look at what our grassroots scene looks like now, I believe that the more entry points, the more doors we can open across with different partners, across with gaming cafes. We are more than happy to have that, because again, we don't want to be that one single org who's just trying to, touch base so much of breadth across India. I look at it in a way that this is the funnel. We want more people to come in the funnel. The more entry points, the more doors of activation. We are more than happy to have more people.
Okay, thank you very much. That was great. Now, I want to ask about a bit of a touchy subject. I was told this was strictly confidential. So, India and South Asia have a really huge scene in mobile gaming, especially. So, games like COD Mobile or,
Correct.
and then BGMI, MLBB. These games are really huge in India. And also Valorant Mobile is supposed to be coming out. I don't know when. I hope you know, but I don't think you can share this on camera. But I just want to know how the game is going to be placed and how the game is going to be marketed to that audience, so that not just to steal customers away from these other games, but also to market it as its own thing.
Yeah. You asked me a bunch of things, so I'm going to take it one by one. But no, I'd love to actually talk about it. I think mobile has been a huge part of India's gaming, scene, and there's no way we can ignore that. And we have to acknowledge that mobile is the way forward. And but I also don't think about it purely as Valorant versus other mobile games. I feel India has some of, again, the most passionate gamers, and they don't necessarily think about gaming as one single platform. Currently, how we perceive mobile is as one of our strongest ways of distribution. Because the number of creators that we work with, the number of esports tournaments that are happening, the number of TOs that are around, all of the distribution is happening through mobile. And again, social media, one of our strongest bits. I think when I joined Riot back then, we had 10,000 followers on Instagram. Currently, we are at, say, 142,000. And that's a lot. That's like crazy growth that we've seen. And that's like actually engaging high audience, and our social media team has worked really hard on it. I'm sure you met Brian, who's our community lead. He's been proactively on it, and we've made conscious efforts to grow that community, because we know mobile is one of the ways how we're actually touching the community. So definitely, I think mobile plays a very key role, and we'll see how it comes. But I think one of the things that the community has made it really clear to us is that they're very excited about Valorant Mobile coming in. And the chatter that I hear is not just, oh, Valorant is coming on mobile. It's more like, hey, like, how's the experience going to be like? How is it going to feel when we play Valorant on mobile? What agent would we play? How would this agent's ability look like? And these are the type of conversations which actually makes it really clear that people are not just excited, people are actually wanting to engage and play as soon as possible. And that is the excitement that we are always looking for. The ambition, of course, is to make Valorant accessible in more ways as possible, and we will eventually see what comes ahead of us. But we are listening to the community very closely. We are keeping all eyes and ears out, and when the right time comes, we'll be able to share more ahead.
Okay, I just want to ask if you could tell me when the game is coming out. Don't worry, I'll edit this part out. But can you just tell me when it's coming out, or you have any idea of a timeline? Now, speaking of, this gaming culture in India and in South Asia, culture obviously plays a huge role when it comes to esports, because, the crowd, they want to relate to the players, they want to relate to the orgs, and also they want to feel the entire energy of the tournament. So, how does your team approach, this kind of storytelling, this kind of energy from the crowd? How do you manage all of that?
Yeah, I think the answer is multi-layered, but I say if I had to pick one, I would say is the depth that we're looking for, and not just depth of players, but depth across the ecosystem, right? Because esports comprises of so many things. It's casters, it is players, it is pro players, it is fans, it is coaches, it is so many layers that we can't just focus on one particular thing and try and work around it. So in general, I look at it like a flywheel, right? It's a compound effect of more players coming in, more people watching in. More people watching means more players participating. More players participating means more registrations, more pro player ecosystem progressing, more coaches, more teams, qualifying for international events. And once I feel the flywheel progresses, that's how the ecosystem will progress. And we again have now at a stage where we acknowledge that grassroots is where we have to focus for. And we've completely made our strategy in such a way that we are encouraging grassroots as much as we can, because once we know we've started it right, there'll be a compound effect of the flywheel progressing. And that's what we're purely working on. We just want our grassroots to grow as much as it can. And I feel South Asian competition is so high. The players are so passionate in South Asia, and we just want the right channels for us to be able to, showcase it. And VCC is one of it, and we really hope it works out well.
Okay, now, speaking of jobs around esports, obviously, like you mentioned, there are casters, there are organizers, and, a whole host of people working behind the scenes to make things happen as it does happen. Of course. in India, so what does that growth, how does that growth look like? Starting from teams, orgs, coaches, and even behind the scenes like casters and organizers. How is that growth happening, and what does it look like?
Yeah, I think India has a very booming gaming scenario, and I think there are so many more indie studios also coming in with so many cool concepts of game that the job opportunities have increased a lot. I would again break it down into two sides, actually three sides. One is when we look at job opportunities, right? There are studio level job opportunities, whereas like you enter into game development or into game economy, and that's completely technical side of how you grow games. Then there's of course publishing side of things, which I really love and is the most fun to work with on most days, which is primarily, could be into brand management, it could be into content management, it could be, creative services, it could be influencers, it could be social media. There's so much more across publishing, but that's where once the game develops, you publish the game, and that's where the publishing office comes into picture. Then, of course, there is the other side of gaming, which is more into esports and creator ecosystem. And again, the options are endless. I would firstly label out like creators, right? I think they are the strongest touch point between the publishing and the fans. So becoming a content creator or a streamer is one of the options. And then of course we have the whole array of casters, coaches, pro players, tournament organizing. I think TOs also have like a whole plethora of job opportunities in terms of also production, management, creator management. There's so much that can go into TOs. So I think TOs is like another one bigger bracket in itself. I think we've covered quite a bit. So there are always like multiple opportunities, and I think it's also okay to like start small. Personally, like I started off, it's been I think the 8th year for me in the gaming industry. I started out as like a marketing content ops where I was doing a little bit of influencer, I was doing a little bit of social media, a little bit of content, SEO, everything. So I think entering in the gaming industry is where I think you should start with, and you eventually make network and go ahead. Yeah.
Oh, that's absolutely beautiful. I had my start the same way, I started as a small internship, content writing, and now I'm here.
That's
so
crazy.
Obviously, that's great. Okay, now, tier 1 competitions always seen as the cream of the crop, top level. Obviously, in South Asia and Southeast Asia, we've had some really great events. Few days ago, we had, Pacific Stage 1 finals in Vietnam. I was there personally. It was really great. And we even had a Masters in Bangkok last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
So, Southeast Asia is great, but having a tournament in your own home ground is a different feeling altogether.
Absolutely.
So, are there any plans, or are there any, is it in the pipeline, anything that you can share with us about any tier 1 events coming to India?
Yeah. Before I answer that, I'm so glad you got a chance to attend all of these events because they were such amazing events. Were you there for Masters London also?
No, so I was, Vietnam was my first event actually,
nice.
And then stage 2 finals is going to be in South Korea.
Oh, nice.
So maybe I'll be there. I'm not sure yet.
We have a bunch of creators also traveling in, so we'd love for you to like also just meet them and say hi to them. But anyway, the reason I also asked is when I was in Masters London, right? The finals were between Lev and
PRX.
Correct, PRX, and then so every day when the matches were happening, right, there were different chants which were going on in the stadium. So when Lev was playing, there were like Spanish chants happening. Whenever there was an EDG match, the crowd was completely different. There was just something else happening, and that's when I realized that esports has gotten so global that the audience completely changes depending on which team is playing. And we realized that that kind of scale and that kind of infrastructure to be able to uphold that audience, that passion, that love of fans is also that is something which we need to eventually work on, right? So as I said earlier, we are always very keen on doing things, but we want to do it at the right time and the right moment. We still feel that, we are working on compounding that and building a stronger case that India is now at a stage where we can actually hold tournaments of that scale. We are starting small. We are doing so much of VCC. We are doing smaller lands just to make sure that we have a stronger case to build internally. And we're able to prove that India deserves it and India is ready for it now rather than the other way around. So that's where we're at.
Okay. Anushka, thank you so much. This has been great. To close out, I just have one question for you.
Yeah.
What do you think is the main thing about the Indian Valorant scene that, people from outside or even Riot Games, from other regions don't quite get about the Indian Valorant scene?
Yeah, I think just the sheer fact that India is so diverse, it changes every city that you travel to, and it's quite interesting to be able to gauge the excitement across all of these cities, right? How a player perceives a particular campaign or a post in Delhi would be so different to somebody perceiving it in Hyderabad. And that's where we're actually working on building and how to connect, right? We're not just trying to localize it for different languages. We're not just trying to reach every city, but we want to be able to capture insights of the community in such a way that the community understands that, hey, we're actually here as a publishing office, we're listening to them, and we're here to support them and help them grow in whichever way is possible. And that's what I think is the biggest difference that comes in when we look at India specifically and South Asia specifically, that it's so diverse, it's so culturally different that no one playbook is the same for every region.
Okay, thank you so much. Just a small question to end it all. VCT Pacific, the play-ins have started today. Do you think any of the tier 2 teams have a chance to go all the way to the finals?
Brian right there is saying no. But I really hope so. I think, if you ask me my dream metrics, and since you've been asking me so many questions about, metrics and what does success look like, honestly, for me, my dream metric would be the day a tier 2 team actually qualifies, or even a tier 3 team actually qualifies. I think that's the day I would say, yeah, like we're ready for it. And I really hope it happens though, but let's see.
Okay, that's incredible. Thank you so much, Anushka. That was all of my questions. Thank you so much for taking the time for this interview. And we're done for today.
Thank you so much. Thank you for coming.